Broadcasting live from Jackson and State in Chicago's Loop, it's Radio DePaul Sports and Entertainment.
You're listening to RDSE, where sports and showbiz meet.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Scoreboard, presented by RDSE. I'm your host, Michael Lyons, and it's been an intriguing week in the NBA this week, and we're going to start right off with my Sacramento Kings. We're 2-1 in the last week since last Friday, with a loss to the Warriors to start it off, a Hornets dub, and a Jazz dub. Now, this loss to the Warriors, a 132-108 loss. It wasn't a great game from anybody on the Kings, to be honest. I mean, DeMar, he was solid, 10 for 14. He had 34 points in this game, but a lot of his points came from the free throw line, so he was kind of hunting fouls, and the rest of the starters, Sabonis had 14 and 14, so another double-double for him this year, nearly a triple-double. Keegan, a better shooting game, but still only 13 points. Zach LaVine, a bad shooting game, and then Malik Monk, 13 points on somewhat efficient shooting. Starters couldn't really get going other than DeMar, and he really only got going in the second half of this game, so by the time DeMar was really cooking, the Warriors already had a pretty large lead, and we were just trying to fight back. Then off the bench, Markelle Fultz gave us 8 points, Jonas Valanciunas 6, and then the rest, nothing really. Keon only gave us 2 this game on 0 for 6 shooting, and Jake LaRavia gave us 0 points on 0 for 5 shooting, so it wasn't a great game from anybody on the Kings, in the Kings side. For the Warriors, pretty solid game all around for a couple players. Brandon Podziemski had 21 on 9 for 20 shooting. Moses Moody, 22. Stephen Curry, 20 on 7 for 13 shooting. Jimmy Butler, 17 points. Draymond, 6 points. That's their starters. And then off the bench, they had a 22-point game from Buddy Hield. 5 for 8 from the three-point line for him. So in a game where the starters for Golden State, Curry and Jimmy Butler, didn't really have a huge game, they still beat us by 24, which it's not like a typical Warriors dub, because a lot of times before the Jimmy Butler trade, it was a lot more, if the Warriors are going to win a game, it has to be a Stephen Curry like masterclass or Jonathan Kuminga masterclass. But since they've got Jimmy Butler, it feels like Steph Curry doesn't have to spend as much energy. Jimmy Butler's coming in. He's getting his 15, 17 points. Draymond's just continuing to be a solid defender and solid playmaker with 9 assists this game. So this was just a tough loss against a good Golden State team, and a game that we need to win if we want to be in the play-in, because Golden State is one of those teams we're going to be fighting with in the play-in right now. For the other 2 games since last Friday, we had a 130-88 victory over the Charlotte Hornets. Blowout. Absolute blowout. This was finally Zach LaVine's welcome to Sacramento game in the arena. 42 points on 16 for 19 shooting, so he had an amazing game. Keegan still struggled this game. DeMar, 18, but struggled. Domantas Sabonis struggled a little bit. Malik Monk struggled. So this was really just Zach LaVine and what he's been doing a lot this season with the Bulls, and now finally had his first big game for Sacramento. And hopefully he can continue to play at this high level. But it's going to be a little bit tougher for him to get his 40-point games on a team like Sacramento, where you got DeMar DeRozan taking shots away from him, Malik Monk taking shots away from him, Keegan Murray taking shots away from him. So he is more or less the second option now. I still believe DeMar is the first scoring option in Sacramento. I think Zach LaVine will probably take that second spot, and then Malik Monk will always just be the flamethrower we need if those guys aren't hitting shots. So hopefully Zach LaVine can continue to do what he did in this game for the rest of the season, even 50% of this. If he can average 26 points this season, I'd be so happy to see that. with Sacramento. And then we'll cover a little bit of his stats since he's joined Sacramento. And then our final game of the week was a 118-101 victory over the Utah Jazz. In this game, Keegan Murray finally had a big game this season. Finally felt like he hit more than 3 threes on 50% shooting. 26 points for Keegan Murray, 5 for 10 shooting, and 9 for 16 from the field. Just a good all-around game from Keegan Murray. DeMar DeRozan had a good all-around game. Zach LaVine, 22 points. Malik Monk, 13. Off the bench, Jonas Valanciunas really had a big game this game. Keon, 11 points on efficient shooting. And then Jake LaRavia, just a 0, but on the defensive side of the ball, he's really making an impact, even though it's not coming up in the stat sheet, but he's still having a solid start in Sacramento. Would like to see him hit a couple more shots, but it'll come with time. And then for Utah this game, a lot of their younger guys impressed me. Bryce Sensabaugh didn't shoot very well, but Walker Kessler, 25 points and 14 rebounds this game. Didn't miss a shot. Sabonis was really struggling to guard Walker Kessler down throughout this game, which is kind of scary because Walker Kessler is not nearly the level of centers we'll be playing in the playoffs or even in the play-in if we do make it. So Walker Kessler kind of killing us and having an amazing game. This is not great to see, but hopefully this was just a one-off game for Sabonis. Cody Williams has still really struggled this year for Utah. A couple of their newer additions, though. KJ Martin had 16 points on 6 for 10 shooting, and then Jaden Springer had 5 points off the bench with 3 steals. So 2 young additions that the Jazz made at the trade deadline, and they looked pretty solid against the Kings. Keontae George coming back from an injury, 11 points off the bench. And then Isaiah Collier, another young guy, 9 points. But Jordan Clarkson really killed them this game. 2 points on 1 for 14 shooting, 0 for 8 from the three-point line. So, again, this is just what the Kings need to continue to do. We need to beat up on the lower teams in the Western and Eastern Conference, whether it's the Jazz or the Hornets. We need to continue winning those games, and hopefully with the teams we're playing that are around the play-in spot, we can beat them up a little bit, because right now the standings in the Western Conference, the Kings are 10th, 3.5 games ahead of the Phoenix Suns, who are still really struggling right now. And from what I heard from Ryan Hinsky this morning on his show, the Hinsky Huddle, that Kevin Durant already knows he's going to be traded in the offseason is what I heard, kind of got from what Ryan Hinsky was talking about. So hopefully the Suns continue to struggle for the Kings to make that push for the playoffs or for the play-in. But, I mean, look at the teams in the play-in right now. Dallas, if they get AD back, Sabonis. I was going to say Sabonis might struggle against him, but Sabonis has a winning record against Anthony Davis in his career since he's been with the Kings. And I think he was like 11-0. I think he might have recently lost the game to him. So 11-0, 12-0, Domantas Sabonis kind of has Anthony Davis's number. The Timberwolves, if they get healthy, Rudy Gobert could be a monster, and he's really going to slow down Sabonis, so that would be tough to see. And then Golden State, they just kind of always have our numbers, so I would not like to see them, but I think they're going to be a team that pushes for that last playoff spot. I think the Clippers will fall to the play-in. So out of the 4 teams that will probably be in the play-in, if the Kings make it, Dallas, Minnesota, and the Clippers, I would most likely I would like to play the Clippers, but we will have to play 2 games to make it to that 8 spot. So other than that, probably Dallas, because I think we match up against them a little bit better. We don't really have anybody to slow down Anthony Edwards. Kyrie, we don't have either, but I think team defense against Kyrie might be a little bit easier, and they're without Derek Lively, and they've been banged up recently in the front court. So if they're banged up down the stretch, hopefully we get to play the Mavericks. But the Timberwolves are also dealing with some injuries right now, but I think they'll get healthy at the right moment. So let's talk about the two big acquisitions that the Kings made at the trade deadline, which were Zach LaVine and Jonas Valanciunas, and see what they're averaging since they've come to the Kings. Right now, Zach LaVine's averaging about 23 points, 4 assists, and 4 rebounds on 60% shooting from the field and 37% from the three-point line. So in the 9 games he's played, he started all 9 games. It's not as bad as people would like to think it is because of the name of Zach LaVine. I knew Zach LaVine was going to come over to Sacramento, and he wasn't going to push us over the level, over the top. He was going to come in, he was going to get his points, solid scorer, and this is what he's proven since he's come to Sacramento. Defensive-wise, still not a great defender, so what I expected from Zach LaVine, I'm seeing right now since he's been on the Kings. Now, for Jonas Valanciunas, he has been amazing for the Kings coming off the bench, and he's really given us a punch off the bench at the big man spot, which we have not had in a very long time in Sacramento. We've gone through years of Alex Len, Neemias Queta, who he's a solid player, but he wasn't really what Celtics Neemias Queta is now when he was on Sacramento. And then we also had like Rashawn Holmes, who was solid for a couple years, but never had a real solid backup center. But right now it feels like Jonas Valanciunas is really, really, really strong, and he's averaging 7 points, 5 rebounds, 60% shooting, 50% from the three-point line. So he's given us everything we want from him, and it was an amazing pickup. We only traded away 2 second-round picks, so solid value. Love the acquisition of Jonas Valanciunas. Jake LaRavia has really struggled since he's come to Sacramento. He cannot hit threes since he's come over. And then Markelle Fultz was another acquisition we made, but he really hasn't played. I think he's played 4 games now, and the last game he only played 4 minutes. So I think I'll talk a little bit more on Markelle Fultz and his impact, and maybe Jake LaRavia next week, because in that time I think we'll see a little bit more of their switch. Because for role players, it could be a little bit different when they come over to a new team, especially like Jake LaRavia, who came from the Grizzlies to now the Kings, in a different offense, so all that. But Markelle, only 4 games, I think he'll really start to pick it up. Now, we're done for right now with the Kings talk. Now we're going to talk about the Spurs. Now, Victor Wembanyama is now out for the season with his blood clots in his right shoulder, and Greg Popovich is not expected to return this season. My ideas for what the Spurs will do to end this season is, like, they're on a 4-game losing streak right now. And some of these games, I mean, the Rockets, Pelicans twice in a row, those are bad losses, especially to the Pelicans. So they made a big acquisition in getting De'Aaron Fox, but, I mean, it's just not going to pan out this season. I think you're going to see a lot more tanking from the Spurs team, because that first game against the Pelicans, their backcourt shot a combined 6 for 45. That's Devin Vassell, De'Aaron Fox, CP3, and Stephon Castle. They shot a combined 6 for 45. Terrible game from them, really what lost them that game against the Pelicans. So what do I think the Spurs will do after this season? Because you got to Greg Popovich, there's signs that he might not even come back to coaching, and that's a big loss for the Spurs organization and guys like Victor Wembanyama, who could really thrive from being coached by the best coach of all time. So that sucks. And CP3 is not getting any younger. He's probably not going to re-sign with the Spurs unless they really think they're championship contenders next season, which I guess it kind of depends on their draft pick and what they do this offseason, but I don't expect that. So I think you're going to see Spurs start to fall down the standings in the Western Conference. Right now, I think they're sitting at the 13th seed in the Western Conference, 6 games back from the Kings for the play-in spot, and they're 3-7 in their last 10 on a 4-game losing streak, like I said, and I just don't see them getting any higher in the standings. They're not going to make a play-in push, and which kind of sucks because when they had Victor Wembanyama, they weren't exactly a lock for the play-in, but you could have expected like De'Aaron Fox, Victor Wembanyama, CP3 push to the end of the season like he did with the Thunder that one season. You could have expected them to make the playoffs or the play-in, so it sucks to see. Let's look at what De'Aaron Fox is averaging since he's got with the Spurs. So De'Aaron Fox averaging around 20 points per game, 7 assists, 4 rebounds on 27% from the three-point line and 50% from the field. So he's also kind of came in and he's kind of on that same level of Zach LaVine. He's still struggling to shoot a little bit, but he's getting his buckets, playing some good team defense team offense De'Aaron Fox is playing. He fits in a little bit more with every offense. So hopefully the Spurs can make that push for the play-in because with a guy like CP3, we never like to see him sit at the bottom of the Western Conference in the last couple years of his career. So hopefully they can turn it around. Maybe Mitch Johnson can really make them push for that play-in spot, and maybe if they push for that play-in spot, they might just say, Pop, you've done so much for the organization. We're going to let you walk with going out on your own terms. So hopefully health is his own terms, and he wants to focus more on being with his family instead of around the sport that he's been with his whole career. And Mitch Johnson, I think he's done a great job with the Spurs since being just forced into that position. So hopefully, I mean, everybody from the Pop coaching tree is going to be great. So I think Mitch Johnson will do a great job with the Spurs to end the season. And hopefully if he gets it next year, he'll do just as good. Now we'll move on to the biggest acquisition of the trade deadline, Luka Doncic. We'll talk about the Luka and the Lakers. They blew out the Nuggets by 23. Then Luka versus former team in the Mavericks. Before the game, Luka was doing push-ups in front of Nico Harrison, and then talking his talk to the Mavericks bench after hitting some threes. But he still showed love for his former teammates at the end of the game, which I think is the biggest thing with that because Luka was kind of forced into being moved. So he obviously didn't want to leave Dallas, so I don't think he has any hard feelings for any of the players in there, but so the Lakers, Nuggets, like I said, 23-point win, 8-point win against the Mavericks, and then a 9-point win last night against the Timberwolves, but Timberwolves were without Anthony Edwards for the last quarter and a half of that game because he got ejected. In the Nuggets game, Luka and LeBron combined for 57 points, 32 from Luka, 25 from LeBron, 21 from Rui Hachimura this game. Austin Reeves, 23 points. He's been amazing since the Luka acquisition. One big thing with this Lakers team, and one thing you're really going to see a lot with Luka and LeBron, is that Luka-LeBron transition as soon as there's a missed shot. There's probably already been 6 or 7 times I've seen Luka get a rebound, LeBron's running out in transition, and he's throwing a full-court outlet pass for an easy dunk. Teams got to be prepared for that, and for now, nobody's been prepared for it. And they've really exploited it when they can, which, I mean, you have 2 of the highest IQ NBA players right now in the NBA, so it's going to be tough for some teams to battle against them. And then in their game against the Mavericks, Luka and LeBron combined for 46 points. Luka with 19, LeBron with 27, and then in this game, Dallas kind of beat up. Kessler Edwards was starting at the 5 for them. Max Christie had 10 points. Kyrie had 35. Klay Thompson had 22. PJ Washington, a donut for 0 for 9 shooting. The biggest thing with this Lakers team that I think about, because obviously you have Luka and LeBron. You're going to be a playoff team. You already are. You're sitting at like the 4 or 5 seed in the Western Conference right now. The biggest thing I think with this Lakers team when they get to the playoffs is the role players around LeBron and Luka. Obviously, you're not really going to slow down LeBron, and you're not really going to slow down Luka. You could try to slow down one of them, but the other one is just going to be a flamethrower, and probably whatever team they're playing is going to get cooked by either LeBron or Luka, because you have to focus your attention on one guy. So this playoffs coming up is going to be really huge for Austin Reeves. I think he really needs to step up and really prove that he's that third piece to a Lakers championship run before LeBron retires. Jackson Hayes, Alex Len, one of them really needs to step up as being that starting caliber center for them. Jackson Hayes has looked solid. 10 points last night against the Timberwolves, 7 rebounds, and a block and a steal. So he's not terrible, but he's not on the level of Nikola Jokic, Chet Holmgren. If you play the Mavericks again, Anthony Davis. So those guys are really going to – the front court for the Lakers is really going to struggle if they play a big man. And then another key piece to them making a finals push with this team is going to be Rui Hachimura. That 1 year against the Grizzlies, he had an amazing playoff series. But is that going to happen again? Like, Rui really made a name for himself in that playoff, in the playoffs that season. So if he can push for that again, hopefully, but I don't know. I think the magic for Rui Hachimura will run out in the playoffs this year. But it really just comes down to Austin Reeves really making a name for himself, proving he's that third star for the Lakers. Then you got to have Jared Vanderbilt, Dorian Finney-Smith. They really need to step it up and be lockdown defenders whenever they're in the game. So that's my takeaways for the Lakers. I think they're 7-1 now or 7-2 with Luka and LeBron. Luka's averaging 19 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists since he's been with the Lakers. But he's struggling to shoot the ball early right now. And he has also become the third player in NBA history to have a triple-double against every team, joining Russ and LeBron. So history will repeat itself with Luka and LeBron. You're going to see a lot of NBA history being made with Luka and LeBron, which is always fun to see when NBA history is being made. But talking about the Timberwolves in their last game, they beat the Thunder twice in 11 days. And so huge accolades from the Timberwolves. And this is they were without Julius Randle, without Dante DiVincenzo, without Rudy Gobert for these games. And they beat the Thunder on a back-to-back for their second win. So the Timberwolves are still a really scary team, even though they're sitting at the 8th seed at 32 wins. And what's the biggest factor in this has been Naz Reid. He's been amazing. He had a better month of February than Julius Randle has had this whole season. So he's putting up big numbers when Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert are out. And Jaden McDaniels has stepped up a little bit. Last night against the Lakers, he struggled, but I mean, it's tough to say with Jaden McDaniels what he will be once some of these guys come back. But in his last 5 games, he has 21 points against the Thunder for the first game, 21 against the Rockets in a loss, 17 points against the Thunder in the loss, and then the 27-point game against the Thunder in the OT victory, and then he had 15 points against the Lakers. He just didn't shoot the ball well last night. That's why I didn't say it was a great game from him. But he's really figured out that when some of these guys go down, he can't just sit in the corner and have Anthony Edwards go out and just have an amazing game. So, because that's not going to happen all the time. And Naz Reid struggled last night. So, this game against the Lakers, they only lost by 9. Naz Reid shot 1 for 10. Jaden McDaniels, 6 for 18. Anthony Edwards got ejected in midway through the third. So, this, not a great game for the Lakers to only win by 9. They took care of business, which you always got to do, which is big. But, I mean, with Luka and LeBron, got these guys playing bad, I would have expected this at least to be a 20-point victory for the Lakers, but that could just be some bias against me, but that's how I view it. But the thing the Timberwolves have really done also well with these guys are out, they're really letting the young guys play. Terrence Shannon Jr. had 25 points last night in 29 minutes. Rob Dillingham, he's shown some flashes when he's played, 4 points last night, so not a great game, but they're really letting the young guys play. Jalen Clark has really stepped up and had a couple big games in the stretch of time missed from Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, and Rudy Gobert. So hopefully these Timberwolves role players can continue to play well, continue to play at a high level. Jaden McDaniels still, even when these guys come back, he still needs to be on the energy that he does not need to just sit in the corner. Because when Julius Randle, Rudy Gobert, Dante DiVincenzo are all back, Jaden McDaniels will just go and sit in the corner. He cannot do that if the Timberwolves really want to make a push. So it's big for him to continue to keep the scoring energy and the attack mentality that he has had in the last couple of games. So hopefully he can continue to do that. Now, talked about the Warriors. They beat the Kings. And now the Warriors from February 1st had an 18% playoff chance. And now they have an 86% chance at making the playoffs as of February 25th. So 3 days ago on Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever that was. So huge turnaround for the Warriors, all because of the Jimmy Butler trade. Steph Curry just dropped 56 points last night on the Orlando Magic. So we already know who Stephen Curry is. We don't really need to dive in and expect that a 56-point game was crazy from him because he's Stephen Curry. In this game, 56 points, 16 for 25 shooting, 12 for 19 from the three-point line. Just an amazing game from Curry. Jimmy Butler kind of struggled this game. Moses Moody struggled. Brandon Pozenski struggled. This is really just Stephen Curry versus the Orlando Magic. And early, the Magic, even though Curry had an amazing first half, Magic were still up for most of this game. But then, again, the Magic struggles of not being able to score the ball down the stretch really came up big. And Steph Curry just took over, and there was nothing really the Magic could do. I mean, Paolo Banchero had 41 points. Franz Wagner had 27 points. The Stars did their job, but other than that, the third leading scorer was Cole Anthony with 11 points. So unless you're getting a 50-point dub, a 50-point game from Paolo against a 50-point game, you're not really going to win many games. It was only a 6-point game, but down the stretch, the Magic have just been really bad this season. They're the lowest in points per game scored this season, and they just need to turn it around. They need KCP to start hitting some shots for them because he has probably been one of the worst signings of the offseason because he has been terrible since they've signed him, and some of their young guys need to step it up a little bit. Anthony Black struggles to shoot the ball sometimes. Jet Howard, occasionally he'll be good, but most of the time he struggles. So hopefully the Magic can turn around. But back to the Warriors. I mean, Jimmy has really been strong since coming to the Warriors. 18 points, 6 rebounds, 5.4 assists, and 1.4 steals. Shooting 50%, but he's really struggled to shoot the three-point ball, which the Warriors just in general have struggled to shoot the three-point shot since getting Jimmy Butler, which is kind of interesting how that has happened. But the biggest question I have with the Warriors is how far could this Warriors team go in the playoffs? Again, it's kind of the question like I posed with the Lakers is it's really reliant on the roster around Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler. Draymond Green, obviously, he's not going to give you a lot on the offensive end, but defensive-wise, there's nothing against Draymond Green. He's a defensive mastermind, and if he could stay on the court in the playoffs, this Warriors team cannot lose Draymond for a game. So he cannot be suspended, no tax for Draymond. He really needs to be on the floor for the Golden State Warriors and really needs to be that defensive presence behind Jimmy Butler because you have Jimmy Butler, you have Draymond Green, you have two defensive geniuses on your team, and teams can't score against them at a high level if you have Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green guarding your two best players. And you have to have a Buddy Hield. If he can be Buddy Hield from the start of the season, this is a team that can go really far. And then some of those surrounding pieces, Moses Moody has to continue to be what Moses Moody has been this season. Brandon Podziemski really needs to step it up a little bit for that second unit. And then Jonathan Kuminga, they really need to figure out what they're going to do with him, if he's going to be starting with the starters, if he's going to come off the bench. How are they going to run their starting lineup once they're fully healthy? So they have a couple question marks, but I trust Steve Kerr, I trust Stephen Curry, and I trust Jimmy Butler, a proven playoff player, to really make a deep push this this season. And I mean, the surrounding pieces with this team are not bad. Buddy Hield, great three-point shooter, really fits in with the culture of Golden State. Jonathan Kuminga, he could really make a name for himself in the playoffs this season. Moses Moody as well. I mean, Gary Payton II, he was a part of their last championship run. Brandon Podziemski could also make a name for himself. These are some younger guys that can really make a name for themselves and be that next generation of the Warriors that they want them to be. They want Kuminga. They want Brandon Podziemski. They want Moses Moody. They want those guys to take over when Steph Curry and Draymond Green and now Jimmy Butler are gone. So this playoffs is big for them to really make that case for themselves to be the next group of great Warriors. And I really think they could. Jonathan Kuminga just really needs to have an attack mindset. If he's coming off the bench, if he's in the starters, he needs to continue to be aggressive. Moses Moody, lock in on the defensive side of the ball like he can do. Gary Payton II, continue to lock in on the defensive side of the ball and make highlight plays when you can to really get the stadium, really get Oracle Arena bumping. And Brandon Podziemski, be a great second guard, be a great guard off the bench for this team. That when Stephen Curry isn't on the floor, you're in there and you're kind of dictating the tempo. You're hitting some threes. These guys are really important for this championship run for the Warriors. Maybe even more important than Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green. Steph Curry will always be the most important player when talking about the Warriors. Jimmy Butler, he's going to be super important in the playoffs if he can be playoff Jimmy like he was in Miami, leading the 8th-seeded Miami Heat team to the finals. This team is going to be scary, and nobody is going to want to play them. And you might see a couple upsets with this Warriors team. Now, this is just amazing to see, because when Detroit is good, the NBA is fun to watch. The Detroit Pistons are on an 8-game winning streak right now, beating the 76ers, the Hornets, the Bulls twice, the Spurs, the Hawks, the Clippers, and then the Celtics. Detroit basketball is back. And they're getting carried by Cade Cunningham, their star man. Defensive side of the ball is really, really important for this team. They fly around the court. Super fun to watch defensively. And, I mean, you just have guys that fit in with the Detroit culture. Jalen Duren, he's that big, tough, strong, gritty center. He's going to get up there. He's going to block shots. He's going to flex on guys when he gets a block shot or he dunks on somebody. He's going to flex on them. Detroit is going to be such a fun team to watch in the playoffs. Hopefully they can match up with a team that could kind of test that energy. Really, the Detroit playoff series will probably be one of the most fun first-round playoff series, I think, this season. And, I mean, Detroit right now, they're sitting at, I think they're 6 in the Eastern Conference. Let me just check real quick. Yeah, Detroit is 6 in the Eastern Conference, 4 games ahead of the Orlando Magic, who are the 7th seed. And I really think Detroit will really just stay. They could even jump up to the 4th seed because Indiana is only a game ahead of them. So I think it's really going to be, if they could be in that 4 or 5 matchup, either play the Bucks or the Pacers, that's going to be some really fun basketball, some really high-level basketball being played. Malik Beasley has been an amazing acquisition for this Detroit team. Should have been in the three-point contest. He's really going to get himself paid when his paycheck is up. And, I mean, it's the first time they've won 8. They're on an 8-game winning streak since the 2007-2008 NBA season, which was the last time the Pistons made the Eastern Conference Finals. And that team, let's look at that team. The 2007-08 Detroit Pistons had guys like Aaron Aflalo, Chauncey Billups, Richard Hamilton, Jason Maxiell, Antonio McDyess, Tayshaun Prince, Theo Ratliff. This was a fun team. Rasheed Wallace. But if you look at this team, it's not that much different from what Detroit has right now. Now, Detroit right now has a lot more three-point shooting. But, I mean, Chauncey Billups, they got a star guard that's really leading the way. They got Cade Cunningham. They got Richard Hamilton, who is a great combo guard scorer. I mean, when Jaden Ivey comes back, he can fill in that position. I mean, this is past Ben Wallace days, but I would consider a guy like Jalen Duren kind of similar in the way he plays and the momentum he can shift during the game with some blocks and some dunks to a guy like Ben Wallace. They got Rasheed Wallace, who he wasn't scared of anybody. They got that in Isaiah Stewart and Beef Stew, and they got a rookie guard who at times can make some boneheaded plays, but when he's on, he's on. Ron Holland to Aaron Aflalo. These teams are really similar. Tayshaun Prince, I mean, I wouldn't say they really have a Tayshaun Prince, a scoring forward. I mean, maybe Tim Hardaway at times. But, I mean, I just love watching the Detroit Pistons. They're super fun to watch. They kind of play with a little bit of an early 2000s attitude. They'll really get in your face or gritty. So they're super fun to watch. Hopefully they can play a team. If I'm a Detroit fan, I want to get to that 5th seed or the 4th seed and have us play Indiana. Jump up to that 4th seed, have Indiana fall to the 5 seed, and you start off the playoffs 2 games in Detroit. Indiana's got to come up to Detroit, and you just kind of get strong. You really play with that energy that Detroit is about. Detroit will be jumping. So hopefully that's what can happen. I'm really rooting for Detroit this season in the playoffs, and I just love watching them play, and I mean, they have more wins than they have had the past 2 seasons combined. It's an amazing comeback, and JB Bickerstaff is not going to win. He's probably not going to win Coach of the Year because Kenny Atkinson has done such a great job in his first year in Cleveland. But any other year, you turn around from going on a 26-25 game losing streak in a season to then you're 33-26 in a lock for the playoffs probably. He should be in that conversation, but it's really going to be Kenny Atkinson that probably wins it. So, but I'm not upset about Kenny Atkinson winning Coach of the Year. I just want to get that straight. He's done an amazing job with Cleveland, and again, Cleveland wasn't a team that we really thought was going to be 48-10, 60 games into the season. So, but Detroit, JB Bickerstaff's done an amazing job, ex-Cavs coach as well. So, hopefully, the momentum he's building this season could carry on into the next couple of seasons, and you'll really see Detroit basketball kind of come back. Because when Detroit's good, the NBA is good. Now I got a couple more talking points. Want to highlight Amen Thompson again. Right now, he's holding players to 40.1% shooting percentage when they're guarded by Amen Thompson, the lowest in the NBA this season. And usually when you think of a player that's holding players to 40% shooting and the lowest in the NBA, you really think of a center. You're thinking of like a Rudy Gobert, anybody on that level, Giannis maybe even. But no, you're looking at a small forward, 6'7", super athletic, but I mean, like you wouldn't expect him to really be the best defender in the NBA this season from a stats standpoint, because he's not going to win Defensive Player of the Year, but he probably will eventually. And Houston this season has also been really fun to watch. So, again, another team that's in that same boat of Detroit. They're going to be super fun to watch in the playoffs. Don't know how far they're going to go, but they're going to be fun to watch. They're a young team. They got some vets that could probably push them to win a first-round series. So, hopefully, I'm really rooting for either Houston or Detroit if, obviously, the Kings don't make it. So, I'm really going to be rooting for the Rockets or the Pistons to win their first-round matchup, make a deep playoff push maybe. But right now, Ahmed Thompson this season, 14 points per game, 1.4 steals, 1.3 blocks, 3.5 assists, and 8 rebounds. He's having an amazing year. He's going to continue to grow into an amazing defender that can really guard all 5 positions on the NBA court. So, huge for him, and honestly, huge for the Rockets because they're really going to have a lockdown defender for years to come. He also is going to grow into an offensive scorer like some defenders might not. I really think for a guy that is so good defensively, like you think of some guys like Matisse Thybulle kind of gives off the same kind of energy his first couple of years in the league. Matisse couldn't really ever develop into an offensive scorer. Ahmed Thompson, though, really can because of the athleticism. He's so young. He's got super high basketball IQ, and he really pushes himself to be the best player. So Ahmed Thompson in a couple of seasons, we might be arguing for him to be in MVP talks. Now, before I end the show today, I want to speak on Jalen Wells, guy that's kind of gone under the radar ever since he's been a basketball player. So we're going to talk about his whole story to being to the NBA and now what he's doing since he's joined the NBA and being with the Grizzlies and how he's really making a push for Rookie of the Year this season. So Jalen Wells has had a crazy path to the NBA. Jalen Wells on Teed Up by Pierre Andreessen on Enjoy Basketball spoke on how he was the 15th man on JV, speaking on his high school basketball career. the 15th man on a JV roster. Like, basketball careers kind of die then. For many, that would have shut down their hoop dreams. But he's really passionate about basketball. He went on after his senior year to go to Sonoma State, a D2 program. And in his sophomore year, he averaged 22.4 points per game and 8.7 rebounds. Solid. D2 basketball. Still kind of thinking, like, hoop dreams could really still be kind of dead. You're just playing it because you're good at it. But then he transferred to Washington State, where he played one season. He averaged 12.6 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per game, and shot 41.7% from the three-point line on 5 shots a game, mind you. So really kind of killed it at Washington State. Nothing amazing. He played in a couple March Madness games. I think he had a 21-point game and a 17-point game in March Madness, I believe. Could be wrong, though, but I believe that is the stat. And then he spoke on when he worked out for 23 teams during the pre-draft process, making sure that everybody knew his name when it came to draft day. And really, this whole story about Jalen Wells is just a story about fight and relentless effort to get to where you want to be. He was then drafted 39th overall to the Memphis Grizzlies and has been a regular starter for the second seed in the Western Conference with the Grizzlies. And this season, Jalen Wells, he's averaging 11.4 points per game, 1.6 assists, 3.2 rebounds. He's having an amazing season with Memphis, and to come in, be a regular starter on a second seed team in the Western Conference is not anything easy, and Jalen really has never had an easy path to the NBA. So the fact that he's really getting a chance early to really prove himself is amazing. I love to see it. Hopefully he's really pushing right now. He's second for odds in Rookie of the Year behind Stephon Castle, and maybe you could see him push for Rookie of the Year because of the wins, with the win difference between Stephon Castle and Jalen Wells. So, he really is making a fight for. He could really be the Rookie of the Year this season. And he was the 15th man on a JV roster, and then he was D2 and 2 seasons in D2, and then he went off, played 1 season in D1 for Washington State, and then gets drafted 39th overall, second-round pick. And he comes in, kills it from day one, proves that he belongs in the NBA, and wins Rookie of the Year. I would love to hear that storyline. Hopefully the Grizzlies can kind of make a push in the playoffs, even though Ja has kind of struggled recently, but they're going to be a strong team, especially they draft so well. They put their guys in good positions. Before the season, I picked Zach Edey to win Rookie of the Year because I thought he was going to fit really nice next to Jaren Jackson Jr., but turns out I overlooked their best rookie, and like a lot of people did, nobody came into this season expecting Jalen Wells to be even in the talks of Rookie of the Year, let alone be the second best in odds and really making a case to be the best. And he's been a day one starter ever since. So that's all I have for today, folks. Hopefully you guys can really stick with the NBA this weekend. Let's see what games we got going on tonight. Tonight we got the Pistons versus the Nuggets. I will be tuning into that game, see if the Pistons could continue their winning streak against a really tough team in Denver. Thunder versus the Hawks. Cavs versus Celtics again, a huge game for Eastern Conference standpoint. Trailblazers and Nets. Knicks and Grizzlies, which will be a fun game. Go watch my boy Jalen Wells, see what he's about. Raptors versus Bulls. Nothing crazy there. I think the Raptors are going to really give the Bulls a run for their money tonight. Heat versus Pacers. See if Andrew Wiggins and Davion Mitchell can really push the Heat to make a deep play-in push. Suns versus Pelicans. Timberwolves versus Jazz. And then the last game of the night, little LA rivalry, Clippers versus Lakers. So that's all I have for today, folks. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to Beyond the Scoreboard. This has been presented by RDSE, and I'm your host, Michael Lyons.